guys, it's Alexis, I Gave This Author Reader, and I'm here today to do the monthly recommendations video. I will leave the link to the Goodreads group down below where they post all of the topics and links and such. For the month of January, our recommendation topic is for historical fiction. I love historical fiction, it's one of my favorite genres, and so I was really excited to be able to recommend some of my favorite historical fiction books, and I'm excited to get some awesome recommendations back as well. So I'll just go ahead and get in. The first one I'm going to mention is one of my favorite childhood stories that I've only fallen more and more in love with as I've gotten older, and that is Tug Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. This is about a young girl named Winnie Foster who basically stumbles into the woods and comes across a family called the Tucks who have drunk from a spring in the woods and basically now have immortal life. And it's set in like the early 1900s. And I love this story so much. It's so much about, like, what immortality means, and for each individual member of the Tuck family, immortality means something different. Something it's a blessing, something it's a curse, and it's just, you fall so hard in love with the Tucks when you read this book, and it's very short, it's for children. I'm sure many of you have seen the movie with Alexis Bledel, which is also fantastic, or if you get a chance to see the play, the musical, it's so amazing and it will make you cry, I promise. But I just love this story so much and I just grow more and more in love with it as I've gotten older. The next one I'm going to mention is Snowflower and the Secret Band by Lisa C. I read this one in school quite a long time ago, but it's basically about the friendship between two women in, I believe, like 1800s China, and about them and writing to each other and going from kids to old women, and about their relationship and how they, were best friends, and then they had periods in their life where they weren't friends, and then they reconciled again, and it's a lot about, like, the culture at the time and the secret writing of women at the time, and it's a lot about these two women kind of discovering, what they want for themselves throughout life, and as they go different ways, how they struggle to maintain their friendship. And it's a beautiful book, and it reads very easy, and Lisa C. just has an amazing way with words. The next book I'm going to mention is Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This is unfortunately the only Ruta Sepetys book I have read, but I'm definitely interested in checking out her other two books that I own. This, of course, tells the story of a young girl named Lena as her family is basically forced out of Lithuania and into the Siberian wilderness during World War II in what was known as the Lithuanian genocide, which is a true story, and it's not a topic that you hear a lot about, especially when studying World War II. And this book is so to the point. Ruta Sepetys does a really good job of portraying these horrible things that happening, but she's not overtly brutal about the way she does it, but it still leaves the same impression in your head. And the characters in this book were just so beautiful, and Ruta Sepetys based them off of real people that she's heard about or known, and just the resilience that the cast of characters in this book has is just so uplifting, and I just love that this is about such a little known thing in history, and it makes me much more eager to read about these events that I've never heard of before. The next one I'm going to mention is Vengence Road by Erin Bowman. This is of course a western, but it does tell the story of 1880s America as we were exploring the West more, and the gold rush era and all that stuff. It definitely does a good job of westerns, of course, are all about that, but that is a good look into America's view of the Wild West, and what was going on during that time. And this was one of my favorite books of 2016. I absolutely love this book, but it's a western, but it is historical fiction because it does show you the life of settlers out west in America in the 19th century, and I think that this book does a really good job of using the tropes that you've seen in all the other westerns: saloons, barmaids, gunfights, horse chases, but it does them in a way that still feels fun and exciting, like it's the first time you've ever seen it. The next book I'm going to mention is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I also read this one in 2016 and fell in love with it. This tells the story of two sisters in Nazi-occupied France as they both kind of undergo their own forms of resistance And I loved this book. The relationship between Vianne and Isabel was just so fascinating to read about, and it was so well portrayed, and I just, World War II is a time in history I enjoy reading about, so I like reading about narratives that aren't typical, and I feel like I really hadn't read anything about the women who resisted in Nazi-occupied France. And overall this book was just really beautiful. There were so many times I cried and just my heart hurt, and then there were so many times that like I cried happy tears because it was just so beautiful, and I just really liked this story. The next one I'm going to mention is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. This tells the story of two families over the course of like 300 years. It's two half-sisters, as one of them is sold into slavery in the United States and the other basically marries a white man on the coast of Ghana, and it's basically just about these two family lines over the course of 300 years, how they interact with each other and how they each struggled and triumphed, and it's a beautiful novel. And I learned a lot about this novel, and it made me curious to learn more about the history of Ghana. And I really, fun fact, Yaa Gyasi actually is from Ghana, but she also was raised here in Huntsville, in Alabama, which is only like an hour north of where I live. So that was really exciting because a lot of the Alabama history that is in this book I know a lot about, because that is the state that I live in the United States, which, believe me, has its own trials. But I liked that, like, it sounds terrible to say that I have a personal connection to this novel in that way, but I do, and that, like, the Alabama history in this book is, you know, a history I know a lot about. It's the history of the place where I live, so I really loved that. But this book just, you know, opened up a whole new world for me, because I really didn't know anything about Ghana and its history, and I loved that this book, you know, urged me to go out and read more, to learn more. And Yaa Gyasi just has a beautiful way of making you fall in love with characters in 10 to 30 pages. So I have to commend her for that, because that was something I thought I would struggle with in this book, and it ended up being my favorite part of it. Last but not least is my favorite historical fiction novel of all time, one of my favorite books, period, of all time, and it's going to be a book that's going to be on most people's lists when they recommend historical fiction, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I have a very personal connection to this novel, just because I read it at a very tumultuous point in my life, and so this book brought me a lot of comfort, so I have a very deeply personal connection to this book. But even apart from that, it's just such a beautiful book, and I know a lot of people say that they really didn't get it, and that's fine. But I recommend everybody at least try to read this book, because it was so beautiful, and it's told from the perspective of death, which is so unique. But just reading about Liesel, who is a girl in Nazi-occupied Germany, as she becomes the book thief, she starts stealing books for a variety of reasons. I will leave that up to you to read about. But it's basically about her losing her childhood innocence as she's growing up in, you know, Nazi-occupied Germany, and how she's coming to understand the world. And it's such a beautiful novel, and I just love, you know, just the perspective of death just adds such a layer of realism to this novel, which sounds crazy, but it makes you, you know, he's throwing out these statistics about the number of people who've died, and about what it's like on like a battlefield, and it's just, that part of it is just so realistic, and it paints such a clear and horrifying image in your mind that I think that this book is effective as much as it is beautiful. Alright guys, so those were my historical fiction recommendations. I had quite a few more I wanted to put on this list, but I was like, let's not make it too long. But I love historical fiction. I'm always looking for historical fiction recommendations. I have so many books on my shelves I want to read, but you guys should let me know down below if you enjoy historical fiction, and maybe what your favorite historical fiction novel is, and I will maybe possibly check it out. But I will see you guys soon with another video.